you. Right, so good afternoon or good evening, I think now, 5:30. Thanks for coming along. This is like an intimate afternoon with Steve Rotheram, London Metro, sorry,
Not
Liverpool,
yet.
Liverpool. Oh dear, it's all started badly. Liverpool City Metro Mayor, and it's the all-party parliamentary group on net zero. So, I mean, hopefully there's a lot of people here who have already got an interest in this, but we're also very mindful that for all people that weren't able to come today, because we've still got restrictions following the pandemic, and as we're in the youth zone today, that a lot of people will then be able to watch this online later on. So thank you, Steve, for joining us. And thank you very much for everybody here. So I think really, probably the best way to sort of begin is tell us, Steve, what your ambition is around net zero and what you think that wider ambition needs to be nationally.
Well, nationally, I think we'll come on to. Locally, we're already planning to be net zero carbon by 2040.
Yeah.
But we're going to reevaluate that because we are bringing some stuff on already.
So sooner than 2040.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get it. Well, I don't want to do that because I want the university to independently assess the progress we've made. Yeah, and
what do you reckon though, roughly?
I know we'll knock a few years off it.
35?
Age?
Yeah, of course, much younger.
I think the bit that we did the other day was to have a world first. So we trialled hydrogen in glass manufacture. So it was proven 100% to be successful. And it means that you can then move on to energy intensive industries and decarbonize those. So that's why I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do it. But we've also got really ambitious plans, as you know, to do a Mersey tidal project. And genuinely, since I was in short pants, people have said, we're going to harness the power of the River Mersey. And it's been our lifeblood for generations, centuries, hasn't it? And now it can be pivotal to our future too. And I've got an independent commission that sits again, because I'm so excited about it. I want it to happen. I've got people who are assessing it and making certain that at every stage it's doable, and of course that it will be financially viable to do something like this.
Yeah, but talk us through how you are actually able to do that as a Metro Mayor. How possible is it to sort of isolate your region and say, yeah, okay, we're going to be net zero by 24 to 2035, without sort of taking in everything that's going on elsewhere in the country?
Well, the Tories have been isolating us for many years. Yeah. No, it's not isolation, because there are projects that are purely Liverpool City region, and then me and some fellow you'll never heard of called Andy Burnham are working closely on a northwest project called HyNet, and it's Cumbria and Cheshire, and it bleeds into a little bit of Wales, but it's us too, and that could revolutionise the whole debate around net zero carbon. And
what is that process like? I mean, how have you managed to do that process? So did you go out there and say, right, I want everybody with great ideas to come to me, or have you sort of like working with scientists and collaboration? How are you doing the practicalities?
A bit of both. I set up something called FASJAB, so it was the Fairness and Social Justice Advisory Board, and I wanted some people to come forward with ideas that we could take forward. And you know, MPs always, when I was in Westminster, MPs, I think, always thought that they were the repository of all the best ideas. And actually, there's loads of great ideas if you ask people. So we've used that, and we've used our community outreach team to go out and speak to different people. Some great ideas come from that.
And then, but when those ideas come forward to you, do you have like a team that are evaluating them? How does that work?
Yeah, a bit of that. Obviously, somebody was talking about, you know, why haven't we got a sort of Cape Canaveral? Yeah. You know, they wanted to go to the stars, and I love the ambition, but perhaps not just now. But lots of them, we could either use them for ideas to generate other things, or some of the things that we have had from them we've implemented. So I'll give you an example. Somebody was talking about trying to get into communities at a low level, but our funding's all very strategic.
Right.
So we did some community environmental funds, and over the last few months I've been going out to different projects. So we've got wildflower meadows in Bootle.
Oh, that's
Beautiful.
yeah.
And in Toxteth, I met a fellow called Barry, who's a Rastafarian, and he's a beekeeper. And they were making Toxteth honey, but he was picking handfuls of bees to put back into the hives. I was like,
that's great.
no gloves on or nothing.
That's brilliant.
He said, well, I'm arthritic, and he said, if you get a bee to sting you, it'll never trouble you again. I was like,
Is that true?
nah, that broke me.
But that's really interesting as well, because sometimes that whole sort of net zero by whatever date feels such an enormous task that can be quite bewildering for people and think, oh no, what can I do? This is all just too much. And there's clearly an issue, isn't there, in the wider world of people sort of feeling overwhelmed by the climate emergency and then almost taking a step back. Do you find that by breaking it down into sort of more things, manageable things like wildflower meadows and beekeeping, that you can get more people engaged?
And that's the thing, isn't it? It is about engagement. I think we've won the argument now about climate emergency and climate change. If you wanted an example of it, go to a fringe meeting and then go back outside, and the climate's changed. We've had 4 seasons in one day, haven't we, at times? So there's something definitely happening. I think the public now are in the right space.
Are they?
I think in general.
But so people that live in your area, I imagine, you know, they'll have their concerns about their jobs, about maybe social care for their families, their cost of living. How do you make net zero a priority for those people?
By explaining that there are really good high value jobs in tackling climate emergency. So we have to find alternatives, don't we? If I am able to get that Mersey Tidal project over the line, there are thousands of really, really good construction jobs, and I'm from a construction background, so that's good. But there's ongoing technical jobs that people will need to do, you know, because the energy comes off. It's not just in a plug and it goes into somewhere. We've got to do all of that back office stuff. And then a lot of those more technical type jobs, we are looking to create perhaps up to 10,000 of them. If you say to somebody on the doorstep, you for or against climate emergency, and obviously it would, if you start to explain that it could give hope for the children and mainly the grandchildren, because I always talk to the grandmas on the doorstep, and if you talk about not just the kids but the grandkids, you really engage them, and they want hope for their grandkids, don't they, that they'll have a better world and a cleaner world and a good job. You can do it all if you tackle it right.
And do you think that people are becoming aware now of things like the weather, as we said, of like clean air? Is that are people starting to talk to you about that voluntarily?
Get clean air a lot. And again, the government with this patchwork quilt that they do, there are different approaches to trying to implement air action zones and stuff. And we've got a number of real hotspots. If you have the heat map, you can see in some of the areas of multiple deprivation, it's also the worst air. And of course, when you translate that into human lives, it's people with asthma. And we've seen that death a couple of years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, that little girl, So there's a story recently about linking it with Alzheimer's disease as well, sort of,
really? That's quite worrying.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we're in the youth zone, and we've probably got quite a lot of young people maybe watching it online. There's a lot of assumptions made about young people. Some people assume that young people are really into environmental issues and green issues. Other people just tend to assume that young people are just in it for themselves and couldn't give a toss about anything. What is your experience of dealing with young people in your region on this issue?
I'd say they're the most enthusiastic.
Are they? Yeah.
Do you think that they probably all their lives been aware that something was happening, whereas of course this doesn't apply to you, but people of my age, when I was growing up, we, for instance, threw everything in a bin. Everything. There was no recycling or anything. We weren't aware of environmental considerations, and every kid is now. I mean, some of them more so than us, because they tell you which one that you can recycle and you can't recycle. You know, they love to impose their intelligence on an older generation who are a bit slower. So I think we've won that with the kids. And as I say, if we then say it's not going to be detrimental to people's employment prospects if we do these things, in fact, it will enhance them. And that's the way that we can get the older generation on board also.
I suppose maybe, I'm making assumptions now, but maybe a lot of those younger people as well have grown up in a time maybe of rampant consumerism and materialism, and you know, you can go and buy the full outfit for under a tenner, chuck it away, get another one. How do we sort of shape that change in thinking?
Oh, I think it's a difficult one, because I've got kids, and I've got a very good relationship with Amazon, because the fella knocks on the door every day when I'm on a Zoom call. One for Hayley, one for Samantha, and so I'm constantly going out and picking up the packages. Yeah, I think we do need to break those habits, and again, I think there's a bit more awareness, isn't there, of the way in which the clothes have been made. And Jeremy Coleman once was talking to me about shirts. I always used to wear white shirts, and he said the only thing is, as long as we're not exporting the dirty bit of it. So it's, in this country, it comes in and it looks all environment, but actually, if the source of that is really dirty, then we need to be considering the whole journey of that article.
Yeah. And then, so also you've done a lot of work in your region, and that's great. Do you feel that is being replicated sufficiently elsewhere? Do you think Labour have got robust enough policy? We heard a lot from Rachel Reeves yesterday. It was really exciting, wasn't it? So do you feel optimistic that this is being rolled out by Labour?
I think we're building a suite of policies that will be attractive as an alternative to this lot. And it frustrates me, in all honesty, that we haven't done more, given the shambles of a government led by an incompetent, and we still haven't caught up, or we're catching up, but we haven't caught up in the polls. So I think I'm looking forward to what Keir's got to say tomorrow. I saw him earlier and said, I hope you smash it out the ballpark, because there's lots and lots of threads there, but we've got to have a convincing narrative, haven't we? So what is that? I think climate emergency and giving hope to young people could be that golden thread that we start to attract people back into the fold.
I mean, so we've got COP coming up in just a few weeks now. Obviously Boris Johnson will be there. He'll be, centre stage, mopping up lots of the attention there. Does he deserve that attention? Has he done enough? I mean, he's made some quite bold statements on climate.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful, because you can get tripped up by saying certain things, can't you, about Mr. Johnson. In my conversations with him, I've never felt confident that what he says is actually going to be delivered, if you put it that way. I think COP26 is a huge opportunity, isn't it, for the country, for the world. And we've been dealing with Alex Sharma, who's the president of it. And because we've got lots of things in our area, such as HyNet, the potential for the Mersey Tidal project, and then how we can use green hydrogen when we eventually generate green hydrogen to run our buses. So we're trialing buses at the moment. So we're getting 20 hydrogen buses before the end of the year. We're also manufacturing hydrogen trains in the Liverpool city region in a place called Alston. And then we're putting it into the domestic gas supply. So we've got all of these different things, and we're going to showcase them. And I've always said that with what we've got, we can become Britain's renewable energy coast. And so we're going to take that message there. But of course, the government needs to be supportive of areas like ours if they are truly going to level up. I know it's a stupid phrase, because as you know, I was a bricklayer, so I know how to level things up. And what you don't do if you're leveling something up is put more into an area that's higher than a lower area, not leveling up.
No. But I mean, so another way of sort of asking that question is, if you weren't in your job, or if the Metro Mayor for Liverpool City Region didn't exist, would all those things that you've just been discussing, like the tidal on the Mersey, would that be happening?
No.
So there's nothing coming out of central government then? Or insufficient, or nothing?
No, the clueless. You need something that you can define an overarching strategy for. So we've pulled all of those bits together, and that's how it works. But even ourselves in the Liverpool City region, we've got no real history of major collaboration. In fact, at times we've been competitive. But look at Greater Manchester, they had AGMA, and so they've been working together for many, many years and had a big vision for instance, a tram system.
Yes.
Well, we had an idea about a tram system and had somebody to develop it way before Manchester, and we fell out. And look what happened. We're still waiting for our tram system now.
Right.
So yeah, I think the government can't do this for us. That's the idea of devolution, to give people the ability at least to shape their own destiny, and that's what we want to do.
So can, as a country, we reach our net zero targets without greater devolution?
I don't believe we can. And if you think of that project I've just said, HyNet, that's not even just one area of devolution, that's a northwest approach, because it has to be driven. And I think me and Andy and others have come together to drive that forward. But if we waited for Whitehall, Westminster, who in all honesty couldn't point to Bootle or Toxteth on a map,
No.
if we're waiting for them to do it for us, it will never ever happen. So devolution might be different in every area, but people are innovative in each area as well.
But what about Whitehall and Westminster under a Labour government? Would that have the same difficulties?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, we've seen, that top-down approach, and we have to get away from that and give people, at least, as I say, the ability to come up with ideas in their own area that are backed by the people in those areas. But
you need a lot of investment for a lot of those ideas. So have you worked collaboratively with big business, people with loads of money? I mean, how have you managed to get that end of it off?
Yeah, I mean, that Jim Ratcliffe, who doesn't like to spend 10 bob, but he's a billionaire, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's INEOS are part of this HyNet and lots of other top companies. There's about 20 or 30 household companies that you'd recognise. Yeah. So they're all coming together. But as I say, it needs to be driven, doesn't it? And then it needs to be supported at central government, because ours is the most comprehensive by far, and I'd say, of course, the best. But we are competing against 3 others. And if the Tories do what they normally do and play politics on this, then ours might not be chosen, because the other one's in Scotland. Right. You might want to do something on the Union. And one's in Tees Valley. Right. And it just seems that they don't have to do an awful lot to get a few bob these days, whereas we have to compete and prove the business case for our area.
But I imagine something like Jim Ratcliffe doesn't do things for his green credentials, does he? Because he can see making a load more money out of it. Yeah. So there's presumably money to be made in a lot of this stuff.
And that's what really I think convinces me that if people like that are backing this, then it's a goer. Yeah. We just need the government to do the right thing. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I do think that we've made a really convincing argument. And I was speaking to Kwasi Kwarteng, and he said on tidal, for instance, that he's going to go back to the department to push to be included in the energy supply for the UK.
That is a brilliant idea, isn't it, about the harnessing the power of the Mersey? I mean, it's just a great vision, isn't it?
Well, think about the skills though that we'll create, because no one's doing it. What I've done so far is to capture the IP. So we're going through it very, very methodically. So we've captured all the IP on it, and then I want to modularize it. So I'll do it in layman's terms or laywomen's terms, but I think if we did it in units, and basically we can do them at a shipbuilders that happens to be local in our area, and you can push them into the River Mersey and join them all together and pull a plug on either end, and then it starts to generate energy. But we can stick it then on, we've got a deep water container port called Liverpool 2, stick it on them, and we can send it out across the world, and we can.
How much energy could you be like? I mean, that's difficult to, but how many homes could you be like heating and lighting?
1 million.
Could you really?
Yeah, just with our one project, 1 million homes.
And when, if it all went well, when could that be up and running?
Before the end of the decade, if we.
That's incredible.
But COVID stopped a lot of the work, because you have to have 2 years of environmental consideration. So and we were a bit through that and then had to stop. So, but we'll start.
I mean, obviously, this whole thing is a race against time, isn't it? And but firstly, naturally, what's your level of optimism about us getting to the end of the race before the time runs out?
I'm not that optimistic that the way we're going and the pace that we're going at is good enough to ensure that we don't go above the 1.5%. I'm not, no. And of course, we're doing some great stuff and all that, but we need the rest of the world to play their part.
Well, that's the next thing. So you've got the national problem, and then of course you've got the global issue.
Yeah.
and it's bringing the people from around the world together. I mean, you still...
Yeah, well, you look at what China's plans are, and you just think, oh, dear me, you know. And
but that's what sometimes can lead to that sense of hopelessness amongst people. You think, oh, you know. Yeah,
and that's why I think you need a prime minister who will actually stick to a promise and go and demonstrate leadership and get others to buy into that vision. And I'm not sure we've got, well, I'm sure that we haven't got, but I'm sure Johnson will do that for us.
All right, I'm going to sort of throw it over to the questions because, gosh, I didn't realize that was time actually. So we're going to go to questions. Is there anything that would like to ask Steve about any of the specifics of the project, or just more generally? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Can I ask just with Mike?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Basically, Matthew, I'm from Liverpool, CLP, so I know you're obviously referencing Ben Ouch and what he's talking about doing. I remember they were looking at doing a similar sort of thing in Swansea, I believe, with the tidal lagoon, and that kind of got axed in the end. So what's your level of confidence that, is it now because you are doing it because you, with you being the Metro Mayor, you have that ability, or are you still going to be reliant on also giving the go ahead?
I think what we did was to learn the lessons from mistakes that were made on Swansea. So we've got somebody in that independent commission who was there and saw some of the things that they got wrong. And I don't know all of the detail because it's not my forte. But I've said, of course, the one thing that we're not going to do is repeat the mistakes that they made. And I think we've almost approached it from, let's, you know, under promise and over deliver. So we've been very, very cautious. When I said 1 million homes, that, I mean, it just happens to be 1 million, is a nice round figure, but I think it'll be possibly more than that. And so we're saying, you know, 1 million homes. The ability for us as well to create hydrogen from the tidal project is really interesting to me as well, because that is green energy. I mean, literally from the tide through electrolysis into hydrogen, and then we can run our public transport network and put it into the gas grid and all of those sort of wonderful things. But that's a little bit later on. With gas prices going up at the moment, you can see that this is becoming more and more interesting to central government. But we'll have to see whether they put the money where the mouth is.
Anything else?
Last question of you. Just sat on the youth zone as we are, there's a slightly curveball question, but really directed to climate challenge. Investing in people as much as investing in technology or infrastructure. And exactly, as what we call it, services, not for the sake of employing services, but you have to have the agency of communities. And one way of getting agency of communities is youth workers enabling, empowering, supporting people to get involved. We can't keep waiting for government, as you rightly said, and it's an emergency meeting now, we can't wait for the next election. So what is it we can do in Merseyside, in Greater Manchester, in the local areas as well, especially where services youth work, voluntary youth work is just being so decimated. So how can we use the climate challenge as a motivator for young people and their agency to get things done, which is generational, not just saying just young people, that helps the communities as a whole, especially in the areas that you represent, Steve, in terms of the more deprived areas. How can we give them hope and resilience and empower them a little bit more?
I think the empowerment thing is really important. So engagement, but empowering as well. So what we're doing locally, we've got a youth. What's the group called?
Council, Parliament.
Well, we've got it's like a parliament, but it's not set up yet as a parliament. So we're going to constitute as a. But we've got some disparate groups at the moment, and we want to pull that together under one umbrella. The representatives of those groups sit on FASJAB, for instance, just as advisory board as well. So there's that, but it's a cluttered landscape, in all honesty, of very, very many different types of youth engagement groups. And where I've been out, they are very, very keen to engage at our level. So, and he put you on the spot as well, and he hold you to it. And we also funded some work through our adult education budget as well. And some of those young people, you know, was it Zero Generation? Some of those young people have come forward with business ideas as well. And then it'd be great if some of those ideas actually become something that we could fund, and then people would really believe that there's a genuine route then into market.
And it's getting those kind of ideas nationally as well, isn't it? That those ideas coming through, but the more emphasis on that. Do you find out some of the young people that you meet, there's a, you know, as we've seen all the stuff recently from the Insulate movement, and we've seen, you know, Extinction Rebellion, do you come across a level of anger amongst young people about people maybe of our age who's sort of been so ineffective on this?
Yeah, I thought I was impatient, but
yeah,
you know, it is to some of the young people, they of course, because of the existential threat of climate emergency, they're holding our feet to the fire, and good on them, you know, that they should do. Sometimes for me, the hardest part is the great ideas, but then translating that into delivery. And that takes a little bit of time. And that's where, you know, people say, you said you were going to do X, as if I've got this magic wand and I can just change the whole system. Genuinely, if we had a Labour government and Labour Metro Mayors and Labour councils, my goodness me, we could speed that up. We could accelerate all of that delivery. It's just very, very clunky at the moment, and trying to engage with some departments. So I want to do more for young people with apprenticeships, for instance. And DFE are probably the worst government department that you could ever deal with.
Is that because they're unwilling to do anything, or is it just they're just a bit ineffectual?
No, well, I think they're both, but I mean, I think they're unwilling. I don't think they've grasped this thing about devolution and working together in partnership, so that you know, the government can claim the outcomes.
Yes.
They can quite, you know, they say, look how we've increased our apprenticeship numbers or whatever. But there's a lot of money sloshing around somewhere that's being raised through the apprenticeship levy that we want to get our hands on and give young people the ideal start to get a foothold in the career of their choice. And we can do that. And instead, I'm told that a lot of money is being spent in the City of London for people to do second degrees, masters and all that sort of stuff. And that's great, isn't it, that we've got people who are, you know, reaching their full potential, but actually, it's not that people in our area are less talented, it's that they've got less opportunity.
Yes.
And that really gets me frustrated. And I want our area and people from our area to be able to reach their full potential too.
Yeah. Any further questions?
Hi, I'm Brianna. Somebody raised in our session earlier that about a really good point. She was a youth worker, works with lots of working class families, and was saying that, you know, they will never be able to afford electric cars. They buy fast fashion because that's all they can afford. It seems there is a big class divide when it comes to things you can do as an individual in terms of the climate emergency. How do we tackle that, make it so it's more level for everybody?
Oh wow, what a brilliant question, and a scary question as well, isn't it? Because I think there's a lot of truth in that. If you have a look at young kids from those areas, there's still that, you know, the postcode that you're born in will determine the type of job that you go into, your life expectancy, and all of those other things. So I understand why fast fashion might be attractive to some people, because if that's all you can afford, that's what you get. You know, when the Tories talk about obesity, they sometimes demonize, well, they always demonize people, but they don't understand that, for instance, if you're in the poorer area, you can't buy the best beans, so you buy the rubbishy beans, but the rubbishy beans are full of sugar. So, you know, it's that sort of thing. So we have to look at the whole issue holistically, and then try to see whether we can pull little bits out that are helpful. The best thing for me, so that people can afford an electric car, is to give them the chance to get a great job. So we're trying to create some great jobs, but give them the chance then to get one of those great jobs. So we are very much about community wealth building, inclusive growth, about trying to keep as much money as we possibly can in the supply chain locally. People have heard the Preston model, but we're doing the Preston model plus. So it's like Keynesian
What's
economics.
the Preston model?
Matthew in Preston is using money, but he's specifically targeting it just for people, businesses in that area.
Yes.
And they're getting more social value out of it.
Yeah.
So we're squeezing now.
Yeah.
I've got my deputy, Metro Mayor, Jeanette Williamson. She's really into community wealth building and social value. And if you saw it on the platform yesterday, our first Black woman mayor of Liverpool City, she's also big into this as well. So they are two very, very strong and determined women who tell me things that I have to do.
It's always a good way. Yeah, that's a very simple way to do it. I think we have one more question.
It's Ian Cartledge from Eon Energy. I'm a resident of Liverpool, live in Oxford. One of the reasons we're here is to talk about decarbonisation of homes, one of the biggest problems we've got in the country. And in a past life, I worked for a local authority in Liverpool, and just to get an understanding of the city region housing policy for decarbonisation, we're trying desperately to lobby the government to give more funds to support those who are living in the most vulnerable properties. It isn't enough. We know it's not enough, but we're doing our best. Is there something that we can do as a city region to lobby government to get more money into the city to improve the housing stock, which is often very poor, as we all know, and support your residents and constituents?
Absolutely, there is. And by the way, in other areas as well, metro mayoral areas, we're sharing ideas around retrofitting. And I want to do it, of course, for the climate emergency issues. But if you think of where those properties are, again, they're in some of our most deprived areas. And you'll know that many of those people have electric card meters. So they're actually and they're paying a premium. So they're the least best off. And they're paying more than somebody who's got a really nice, mansion that's fully insulated and all that for each unit of electricity. So there's the fuel poverty issue, there's the climate emergency, but it's also about those jobs of the future. And we've got, I think, 700,000 properties that will need some attention to do in our city region. So by the end of this year, we'll have piloted, I think we're doing 500, I'm looking to my left, but we're doing a small number to try to see how we can decarbonise, how we can improve and how we can insulate and all that, and how much that will cost, so we can roll it out in a much bigger program.
I'm guessing that's going to cost a lot though, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It costs an awful lot. But of course, if you think about it, that you are tackling climate emergency
At the same time,
and you are creating really good jobs, and we can keep that locally, and then those people who are least able to afford their energy bills will see savings as well. I think there's a win-win-win.
What about incentives for regions that reach their target, their net zero target, quicker than others?
Oh, yeah, but if you did that, for instance, I can think of one region who have a metro mayor that might be able to do that before, because
it's always easy for them.
They're getting envelope stuff in the letterbox every day. So no, we're going to do stuff anyway, despite national government, and it would be so much easier if they wanted to work in partnership.
Any sort of further questions? No? Oh yeah, got one there. Oh, microphone.
I wanted to ask, if you had a magic wand, what corporate or large organisation would you want to move to Merseyside to create opportunities and jobs that you were talking about?
See, I'd rather do it not just one. What we're trying to do through something called the Good Business Festival is to look at ethical businesses moving into the Liverpool City region. So you'll see more about this next year. We're going to have this, hopefully, summit, but it was supposed to be taking place 12 months ago or so, but because of COVID, it couldn't go ahead. So when things are safe, we're going to have this in Liverpool, and there's some brilliant companies out there, and there's some brilliant companies led by young men and women that are really interested in doing this. So I'd rather start to build a network of really good businesses that then bounce off each other, rather than just have one coming in, which is totemic, and who might come in and then bugger off again. So no, I want the indigenous business network in the Liverpool City region, an ecosystem, to be different. I want people to look at the Liverpool City region and see that even with limited powers and devolution, that you can do things to change the way that relationship works between, not quite state, but you know what, in this case I'm saying the state and businesses. I think you can be pro-business, but you can be pro-worker as well.
I wanted to ask as well, it's like difficult. Do you have any regrets about things that you haven't done during your time, both in this job but in previous jobs as well, that you feel could have been or should have been done to delay the climate emergency?
Oh, probably in Parliament, when I was in Parliament, that was it's a really, really strange experience, because I'd never even visited Parliament before I went there, and I was elected as an MP and walked in, and it is the opposite of a TARDIS. On the telly it looks really big, but inside it's really intimidating, isn't it? So there are things I think I should have done more to speak up about climate emergency. The
But
things
for a
I should
long
have
time
done
it
more.
wasn't really a thing, was it?
No.
People didn't talk about it, did they?
No. I'll give you that, just because you've triggered something in my mind, so I'm going to say it. But when I went in, where I sat in the corner by the Sergeant at Arms, the person sitting opposite me was Jacob Rees-Mogg, and he came in at the same time.
Big
And
mates.
So much in common. And I used to think to myself, how disappointed must his mum and dad be that they've given him the best education in the world, and he's working in the same place as a brickie from Kirby.
I'm sure they were very proud.
I'm sure they're very proud.
Oh no, well, thank you very much. I mean, I think it's really inspiring to hear all the things that you are doing in your region. I mean, things like the Mersey sounds amazing, all the other work you're doing on public transport. And I just think it's really hopeful to share these stories of positivity. I think other regions can learn from it. Nationally, we need to and it all kind of just makes people feel that there are solutions out there. Everyone's going to have to work collaboratively very, very hard over the next few years, but there are ways through this, aren't there? So well done, Steve. Thank you very much for joining us. And anybody watching this, I hope that you're able to take from this and carry on the good fight. Thank you.
Thank you.